All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling one of the most, honestly, probably the most, fundamentally misunderstood ideas in all of classical philosophy. We're talking about the unmoved mover. How exactly can an eternally unchanging God actively engage with our constantly changing world? You know, it's a puzzle that's literally tripped up thinkers for centuries, but as we dig into the source material today, we're going to see just how incredibly elegant the answer actually is.
So the crucial point we need to hit first is this giant paradox. When we hear words like eternal or immutable or unchanging, what do we naturally assume? We assume it means frozen, right? Distant, completely inactive. We kind of picture a deity just sitting on the edge of the universe, doing absolutely nothing while we're down here doing all the heavy lifting. But as we'll see, that couldn't be further from the truth. The phrase unmoved mover actually describes the exact opposite of inactivity.
Let's think of a school principal to really wrap our heads around this misconception. Like, if I told you the principal never moves, your brain might instantly picture her frozen like a statue in the middle of the hallway, right? Maybe with pigeons sitting on her head. But come on, an unmoved principal isn't a statue. She's the one actually setting things in order. She's giving the directions and keeping literally everything moving behind the scenes, even if she isn't sprinting from classroom to classroom. It's her stability that actually allows the whole school to function.
To really ground this conceptually, philosopher Etienne Gilson has this beautiful perspective. He reminds us that approaching this stuff philosophically doesn't destroy the religious narrative at all. In fact, actually scratch that. It doesn't just not destroy it. It helps it develop so much more fully. Faith doesn't cancel out reason. It elevates it. Reason uncovers the strict logical necessity of an unchanging first cause, and then faith steps in to reveal how that exact cause interacts with us in real historical time.
Okay, to really nail this down, we're going to borrow a couple of quick terms from Aristotle. He tells us that all change in the universe requires moving from potency to actuality. Think of a pot of cool water. It has the potential to boil, right? That's potency. Now, when you turn on the stove and it starts bubbling and steaming, that's actuality. It is actually boiling right now. But here's the catch, and this is super important. Cool water cannot heat itself just because it has a good attitude and big future plans. Something that is already actual, like a hot stove, has to cause that change. Now, imagine a giant row of shopping carts just rolling across a grocery store parking lot. Cart 7 only moves because it was bumped by Cart 6, and Cart 6 only moved because of Cart 5. You see where I'm going with this? You could literally have an infinite row of bumping carts stretching all the way to the moon, but guess what? That's just an infinite traffic problem. It still doesn't explain why any cart is moving right at this exact second. An infinite number of borrowed actions still absolutely requires a primary mover, someone whose action isn't borrowed from something else. Basically, someone actually has to push that first cart.
And that brings us straight to Thomas Aquinas. He brilliantly identifies this unpushed first mover as God. He uses this term, pure actuality. Now, this doesn't mean God is just some abstract philosophical blob floating out there. It means God possesses absolute perfection without ever needing to acquire it or learn it or, build up to it. His power to act isn't suddenly awakened. It's not charged up like a battery. And it's certainly not supplied by something prior to him.
If we compare this to a simple to-do list, it all becomes incredibly clear. You and I, we have lists of unrealized potentials, right? Become wiser, learn a new language, hit the gym. Every single time we act, we're basically trying to complete ourselves. But God? God has no to-do list to become God. He is already fully actualized. He doesn't act to improve himself. He acts purely to give existence, growth, and actuality to us. Think of it like a video game. God isn't leveling up. We are.
So how does time fit into all this? We often treat time like it's this magical force. We say things like, time heals all wounds. But time is really just reality's measuring tape. It measures the sequence of before and after, but it doesn't actually cause anything to happen. I mean, leaving cake batter on the counter for a week doesn't bake a cake, it just creates a really gross science experiment. Because God doesn't change from potential to actual, he simply isn't measured by time. His life isn't chopped up into a before and after the way ours is.
Which brings us right back to that central paradox. How on earth can an eternal God act to create a temporal world without changing himself? Well, the secret lies in the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic change. When a student learns math, they change intrinsically. They acquire totally new knowledge in their brain. But if you walk to the other side of a concrete pillar, the pillar only changes extrinsically. It has a new spatial relationship to you, sure, but its core structure hasn't altered one bit.
When God creates, the change happens extrinsically to God, but intrinsically to the creature.
Let's use building a snowman as an analogy. Creating that snowman genuinely changes the snow. It totally changes the look of the yard, and it gives the world a brand new snowy resident wearing, your dad's old hat. But actually building it doesn't intrinsically alter your core identity as a human being. You're still you. In a much, much more profound way, when God gives us grace or sustains our very existence, the newness, the change, the whole before and after thing, that happens entirely on our side of the equation.
And this brings us to the ultimate Christian resolution of this whole paradox. To truly understand how the unchanging God acts in human history, we have to look at the Trinity. The Father is not the Son, and the Son is not the Father. But the eternal, unchanging Father is made perfectly visible in the temporal, historical life of the Son, Jesus Christ. The Father sends, and the Son is sent. The Incarnation is this mind-blowing moment where eternity literally steps into time. It makes God's unchanging love historically visible, all without God ever having to develop new traits.
If you read the Gospel of John, it repeatedly mentions Jesus saying, "My hour has not yet come." And honestly, this is a massive clue. It proves that divine action isn't just some improvised reaction to human messes. God didn't just wake up one Tuesday and frantically decide, "Oh, I need to save the world today." No, it's a deeply ordered temporal mission. The timing really matters. The sequence matters. It is unfolding exactly as God eternally willed it to unfold in our history.
When we map out this timeline of Jesus' life, it becomes incredibly clear that God eternally willing the outcome doesn't erase the absolute necessity of the journey itself. It's kind of like a parade. The organizer knows the exact route and exactly where it ends, but the marching band still has to actually walk down every single street. Nobody gets to just teleport past the tubas. Jesus' baptism, the fasting in the wilderness, his teachings, the cross, the resurrection, every single bit of it had to be walked in a genuine step-by-step human sequence.
Jesus actually predicts his passion 3 separate times in the Gospels, so he knows exactly where his mission is leading. But here's the thing. Foreknowledge doesn't make the pain, or the fasting, or the obedience fake in any way. Knowing the ending is just not the same thing as having actually experienced the path. True human freedom and true obedience require stepping into that temporal sequence and truly living it. The path is exactly how the ending becomes a reality in our history.
And we see this exact same pattern echoed in other lives, too. Paul is called long before his work is actually finished. Peter is given his name, the Rock, way before he is fully formed as a leader. David is anointed years before he ever sits on the throne. Mary says this profound yes long before she lives out everything that yes will eventually demand of her. A real divine call always exists before its step-by-step historical fulfillment in time.
So, if you take away just one thing from all this deep philosophy and theology today, let it be this. The unmoved mover doesn't act by changing from inactive to active. He acts by giving us the existence, the freedom, and the time we need to grow. Basically, God gives the actuality, and we get the before and after. We get the gift of time to actually become what we are called to be.
Etienne Gilson has another fantastic quote. He says, "Philosophy always buries its undertakers." People are constantly trying to declare that these deep classical questions are dead and gone, but they always endure. They survive because questions about existence, time, and this idea of a prime mover, they constantly invite us to look a little closer at reality. They ask us to peek behind the curtain of the universe and see the profound, beautiful order that's holding the whole shebang together.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly practical thought for you to chew on. God's absolute perfection means he has literally nothing left to become. But we do. Our lives are entirely built on unrealized potential. So knowing that you have the time, the space, and the before and after generously given to you by the very source of all existence, what are you choosing to become? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.